April 22nd's worksheet is asking you to add fractions, and fractions often are not what we love to do because they're hard. And I will say adding and subtracting fractions is harder than multiplying and dividing them. So what you need to remember about adding fractions is you have to have a common denominator, okay? So if you want to remind yourself, the numerator is on top and the denominator is on the bottom. Okay, your denominator needs to be common. What does it mean to be common? They need to have the same denominator. Okay, so if you want to write that at the top of your paper, the denominator needs to have a common one between both numbers, so it needs to be the same. So if we look at number 1, we have 3/5 plus 1/2. Well, that's not going to work out because we have two denominators here that are not the same. So what you need to do is I usually go over to the side and I rewrite the problem and I leave some space, okay? And then I'm going to do 1/2 and make another fraction bar there. All right, I've got to say what number do 5 and 2 both go into? And they both go into 10. So I know that I need 10 to be my denominator. That's going to be the common denominator, okay? So I'm going to sit here and say 5 times what gives me 10? So 5 times 2, and I'm going to write that real small, 5 times 2. And then 3 times 2, I've got to do the same thing to the top to make that common. So 3 times 2 is 6. So 3/5 is the same as 6/10. I'm going to go ahead and mark out my 3/5 so I don't mix up anymore, okay? Now I've got 1/2, and I have to say 2 times 5 would give me 10. So 1 times 5 gives me 5. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that out as well so I don't accidentally use those numbers. So now I have 6/10 plus 5/10. And the way you're going to add this is just go straight across the top. So 6 plus 5 is 11. And then our common denominator is 10. You just bring that across. You do not add the denominator. Do not add the denominator. You're just adding the numerator, okay? Keep that common denominator. Your answer should have the same one. Now look at this. We have 11/10. You can change that to a mixed number, and if you'll remember how we do that, we say how many times does 10 go into 11? So 10 goes into 11 one time with 1 left over. So you could say 11/10 or 1 1/10 as your final answer. We'll try another one. The next problem has 2 and 10 as our denominators, and we know that a common denominator between 2 and 10 would be 10. You could have the same one. So 10 goes into 10 and 2 goes into 10. So let's rewrite our problem, 1/2, and then leave our template for our new number, plus 4/10, okay? And you don't have to have a new number, but you can just rewrite it if you'd like. So 1/2 with a denominator of 10, we'd say 2 times 5 is 10, and then 1 times 5 is 5. So 5/10 is the same thing as 1/2. So we'll cross that out. So I'm looking at my 5/10. And here we don't have to rewrite it because it's just going to be 4/10, but if you wanted to, just for the process, that's fine. So 5/10 plus 4/10 would be 9/10. And since 9/10 is not an improper fraction, improper means that the bigger number, the numerator is bigger than the denominator. In this case, the numerator is smaller, so 9/10 is an accurate answer. There's no way to reduce that. All right, we'll do one more for practice. 1/2 plus 3/10. Now we know we're going to go ahead and rewrite 1/2. And we know that 2 and 10, the common denominator from before in the first problem, would be 10. So 2 and 10, we need to change this to 10. So we'll say 2 times 5 is 10, and 1 times 5 is 5. So we have 5/10 plus, and we don't have to rewrite this. I'm just going to show you this way, 3/10. Since we have the same denominator, you don't have to rewrite it with a template like we did before. So 5 plus 3 equals 8. And our common denominator is 10. Now, can we reduce that? We can. The way you're going to reduce this, since it can be in simplest form, and the directions don't ask you for simplest form anywhere on there, so if you leave it at 8/10, that's fine. But simplest form would be to reduce them. So I can divide both of them by 2. So if I divided it by 2, I get 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 4/5. So I would take either 8/10 as your answer or 4/5. Now it did not ask for simplest form, so if you leave it at 8/10, that's fine. Remember when you're doing these, you're going to add the numerators together. You are going to have a common denominator. You never add those denominators. That's the point of having that common number. So keep that number common the whole time, and you will just add the numerators.